cause of this is an antiquated system which contributed to tragic loss of life. That's the root cause of this. The government responded by putting forward a bill. Our member from Hamilton Mountain responded by asking the Ombudsman to look into our child care system. The Ombudsman came out with a report this October, which was, it's right here, which was very damning to the government. The government responds. The government responds with this bill again, and responds by saying we have to do this right away, push, push, push. But in the House, when questioned by our member from Hamilton Mountain, the Minister of Education said that a lot of the issues brought forward in the Ombudsman's report have already been dealt with. So the argument that this bill has to be finished as soon as possible is somewhat doubtful. The government responds by putting a time allocation motion forward, once again saying that the opposition parties are trying to stall this legislation. And I can certainly say, as far as the New Democratic Caucus, we are not trying to stall this legislation at all. We are trying to do our part to make sure it's done right. That's the job of this legislature, to do as good a job as possible to make this as effective legislation as possible. Because once again, we are not dealing with widgets or traffic signs. We are dealing with our children. It's a bit of doublespeak to say that we have to move right now because the system's so antiquated and we've had the same government in place for more than a decade. So, you know, all of a sudden for the rush to be on. So that's the background. So we have a time allocation motion, and basically that's limiting the members' ability to speak to this bill. And although we don't agree, we don't think that that's the main issue here. We're also limiting the public's ability to speak to this bill. And where we have a problem is with the hearings being held in Toronto, and with two days of hearings, we're in favor of that. Because there's a large population base here in Toronto, and they have child care issues, obviously. So, do we feel that hearings should be held in Toronto? Of course. Of course. Mr. Bradley, when he spoke to this motion, I'd like to quote from the Hansard. This motion allows for 2 days of public hearings that go into the evening. Now that's something a little bit different. Go right into the evening so that all who have an interest in this important piece of legislation can appear before the committee. And that's where there's a problem. Because all who have an interest do not have the ability to appear before this committee. I've often heard the Premier say that she's the Premier of all Ontario. She believes in one Ontario. And we agree. But one Ontario is much bigger than having a committee meeting in one spot, specifically in Queen's Park.
Especially for parents who can't travel.
You know, it's not just, and especially in a case like this, because yes, stakeholder groups, they are equipped to travel, but what this committee should really hear from is the different experiences from people who actually experience the child care system in the various parts of Ontario. I've often spoken in this House about other legislation that looks excellent on paper, but doesn't work on the ground. And we can't afford to do this. Yesterday in the Late Show, I happened to stay for part of the Late Show, and the response from the member from... Oh, I know Mr. Crack's name, I don't know his... Glengarry Prescott Russell. And he said this was groundbreaking legislation, and it was a monumental shift. Well, if it's groundbreaking and monumental, we should take the time to listen to people to make sure it's done right. That's the issue. At no time does our caucus believe that we should stall this for political purposes. We're not trying to do that. We are trying to get as many voices as possible, constructive voices from across the province, to have input in this bill and to be able to relay their experiences. That is the crucial part of this. That's why we proposed the amendment that this bill be traveled. I believe that's why the Tories, I'm not partial to their inner workings, but I believe that's what they're proposing with this sub-amendment. Our issue with the sub-amendment, we believe that it should be the committee who decides where they go, because, as opposed to us. But that is not neither here nor there. But it is important, it's crucial, that this bill hear as many voices from as many parents, from as many child care providers, licensed, unlicensed, as possible. Thank you, Speaker.